Journalists quickly pointed to inconsistencies in the flight path, the troop manifest, and the silence that followed the incident. Inside Burkina Faso security circles, the key question was never why the plane malfunctioned. It was why it appeared where it did, carrying soldiers whose mission remained unclear. Releasing the troops was not a sign of weakness, it was a strategic decision made after a rapid intelligence assessment and a message to every external power watching West Africa's new alignment take shape. The soldiers returned home, but the doubts, the suspicions, and the geopolitical ripples stayed behind. And those ripples are now shaping the real story. I speak to you today because the incident involving the 11 Nigerian troops did not appear out of nowhere. In our region, nothing happens without a chain of actions beneath the surface. When that military aircraft entered our airspace without authorization, every alarm we had built for the protection of our sovereignty activated at once. As president, I do not have the luxury of assuming good intentions. I must defend the integrity of our land, our people, and our future. When my commanders informed me that the plane had landed in Ouagadougou, I asked one question. Are we dealing with an accident or a mission that was never declared? That question shaped every decision that followed. The soldiers were detained, questioned, and assessed. Not because we sought confrontation, but because Burkina Faso has reached a point where we allow no room for uncertainty. The Sahel is under pressure from every direction. Any mistake can open the door to destabilization. People outside our borders saw the release of the troops as the end of the matter. They were wrong. What happened inside our operations room was far more revealing. The inconsistencies in the flight report, the unusual route, the silence from those who should have informed us ahead of time. These details forced us to treat the event as a potential breach rather than a simple malfunction. We needed clarity before we allowed anyone to return home. Some will say we acted aggressively. I say we acted responsibly. Burkina Faso has been targeted before by hidden agendas, by unannounced flights, by intelligence operations masked as humanitarian movements. I carry the memory of every incident that cost our soldiers their lives. I will not repeat the errors of past governments that trusted the wrong forces and paid in blood. Releasing the troops was not an act of softness. It was a decision grounded in the information we gathered and the stability we intend to maintain within the Sahel Alliance. We showed that we will respond firmly when our sovereignty is breached, yet we will also choose diplomacy when the truth clears the fog. But let me be clear to every neighbor and every power watching. Burkina Faso will question anything that threatens our security. We will challenge anyone who tests our borders, and we will respond with unity, discipline, and conviction. Because this incident was only the beginning of a larger game unfolding around us. And I intend to expose that game piece by piece. When the plane touched down without clearance, it was not the aircraft that concerned me most. It was the silence that followed. In West Africa, silence is rarely accidental. It usually signals hesitation, confusion, or an attempt to hide intent. For several hours, neither Abuja nor ECOWAS provided a clear explanation for the presence of their troops on Burkinabe soil. That silence told me something was unfolding behind closed doors, and it was my responsibility to understand what. Inside our command center, every detail was placed under scrutiny. The flight's path did not match the official story. The communication logs showed irregular pauses. Even the state of the aircraft raised questions about whether the malfunction was genuine or used as a cover. I told my generals that Burkina Faso would not accept narratives that do not align with the facts. We have survived too much deception to return to blind trust. During the questioning of the 11 troops, my priority was not to humiliate them, nor to create conflict with Nigeria. It was to establish clarity in a region where misinformation is often deployed as a weapon. The soldiers appeared disciplined, but unsure of how much they were permitted to reveal. That alone signaled that the mission carried layers beyond what was shared publicly. I will not disclose every detail of what was learned, not because I fear consequences, but because national security demands discretion. Yet I can say this. There were elements that did not align with a simple emergency landing, and that knowledge shaped how we responded. Our decision to release the troops came after 3 strategic considerations. First, escalating the situation would have opened the door for ECOWAS actors who are waiting for any excuse to paint Burkina Faso as unstable. Second, the Sahel Alliance values predictable cooperation within the region, even when tension arises. Third, we had already achieved what mattered most. We asserted our sovereignty and made it clear that no military force enters our territory without explanation. I chose to release the soldiers because Burkina Faso had already won the most important battle. We demonstrated discipline, intelligence, and control. We showed Africa that the new Sahel does not panic, does not bow, and does not react blindly. But we also uncovered signals that this incident is part of a wider pattern, a pattern that threatens the balance of power in West Africa, and now that pattern must be addressed. In the days following the release of the 11 Nigerian troops, many asked why Burkina Faso reacted so decisively. They forget that our nation stands at the center of a silent contest for influence in the Sahel. Every move on our soil is watched, interpreted, and measured by actors who want to shape West Africa's future without ever stepping into the light. This is why I say the incident was not an isolated mistake, it was a test. Someone wanted to see how far Burkina Faso would allow its sovereignty to be stretched. The pattern has been clear for months, flights skirting close to restricted airspace, intelligence reports showing unusual coordination between foreign operatives and regional political actors, statements from ECOWAS hinting at pressure that does not match their public diplomacy. These signals form a chain, and the unauthorized landing fit neatly into that chain. I knew it the moment my commanders informed me of the aircraft's registration. What concerned me most was not the soldiers on board, but the possibility that their presence was designed to collect information or assess our readiness. Nations have used such tactics for decades. A so-called emergency landing becomes a convenient cover for observing responses, testing defenses, or measuring political unity. Burkina Faso cannot afford to ignore these possibilities, especially when our enemies hope for even the smallest crack in our resolve. Inside Nigeria, there are factions pushing for alignment with foreign interests that oppose the Sahel alliance. I do not blame the Nigerian people. They are our brothers. I speak of political forces who still cling to the idea that West Africa must remain dependent, divided, and vulnerable. These groups know that a united Sahel challenges their influence, so they watch us, they probe us, they wait for weaknesses. This is why our response was disciplined. We acted firmly, but not recklessly. We allowed no chaos, no panic, and no emotional reaction. My intention was simple. Burkina Faso must show that it is no longer a weak state that can be manipulated or intimidated. Every move must reflect strength and clarity. The release of the soldiers was not a sign that the matter was closed. It was a signal to the world that Burkina Faso sees the broader game in motion. What landed on our soil was not just a plane, it was a message, and now the Sahel must respond with unity. As the days passed, many external observers claimed that Burkina Faso overreacted. They speak as if they understand the dangers we face. They do not. They do not live with the memory of villages burned by insurgent groups armed by foreign interests. They do not carry the responsibility of protecting a nation that has survived waves of destabilization. Those who judge us from afar forget that Burkina Faso stands on a front line they helped create. When we evaluated the incident, I asked my security chiefs to trace every movement of the aircraft before it entered our airspace. What they found strengthened our concerns. The flight had deviated from its stated route, communication gaps appeared at critical points, the timing aligned with intelligence alerts we had received about increased surveillance attempts on Sahel Alliance military readiness. None of this could be dismissed as coincidence. Inside ECOWAS, there are leaders who still believe the Sahel countries must return to the old order. They struggle to accept that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have chosen a new path based on sovereignty, dignity, and regional independence. To them, any opportunity to pressure us is useful. A sudden landing, an unclear mission, or a diplomatic misunderstanding becomes a tool for narrative warfare. I am not blind to this game, and I refuse to let Burkina Faso become a pawn again. Our people have changed. They no longer accept leaders who bow their heads while foreign soldiers cross our borders without explanation. They expect us to defend this land with courage and discipline. That is why our reaction was firm. It was not aimed at Nigeria as a nation. It was aimed at the forces that benefit from confusion and weakness. We will not give them that satisfaction. Diplomacy required that we release the 11 soldiers once the questioning ended and our intelligence evaluation was complete. But strength required that we send a message through our actions. Burkina Faso will not tolerate any operation that undermines our sovereignty. Every incident will be examined. Every aircraft will be monitored. Every explanation will be verified, not accepted at face value. This event made one truth clear. The Sahel is entering a new phase of geopolitical confrontation. The alliances being built are not only military, but ideological. And as this confrontation deepens, our enemies will attempt more subtle moves to weaken our unity. The unauthorized landing was one such move. We recognized it, we responded, and we will remain vigilant. After the release of the 11 Nigerian troops, many assumed that Burkina Faso would simply return to routine operations. But I knew this incident would echo far beyond our borders. What happened was not just a question of sovereignty. It revealed the strategic vulnerabilities that outsiders hope to exploit. And it reminded me that every decision I take must serve one purpose: protecting the future of this nation. Inside our intelligence briefings, we discussed a scenario that concerns me more than any aircraft landing. The possibility that external actors are testing the unity of the Sahel Alliance. They know that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have built a new front against exploitation. They know our cooperation disrupts the old networks that benefited from our instability. A sudden, unexplained military presence on our soil could easily spark mistrust between partners if handled poorly. That was the real danger, not the soldiers, but the reaction that others hoped to provoke. I refuse to let anyone divide the Sahel. Our enemies rely on fragmentation, they rely on suspicion, they rely on the belief that African nations cannot trust one another. That belief is exactly what I intend to destroy. When we questioned the 11 soldiers, we did so with precision, not hostility. I wanted clarity, not escalation. And when we released them, it was a demonstration that Burkina Faso acts with discipline, not fear. Still, the incident exposed a deeper truth. West Africa is entering a period where diplomacy will be used as a mask for influence. Military cooperation will be used as a cover for surveillance. Humanitarian gestures will be used to disguise political pressure. I have seen these tactics before. They cost lives, they weaken nations. I will not allow them to return. Our people deserve a leadership that anticipates threats before they fully appear. That is why we are strengthening our air defenses, improving regional coordination, and building a security doctrine that protects our skies as firmly as our borders. No unauthorized aircraft should ever reach our soil again without immediate accountability. The release of the troops was not the end. It was a reminder that Burkina Faso must always be ready to question, ready to analyze, ready to respond. Because in this new era of West African politics, the real battles begin long before a shot is fired. In the discussions that followed the incident, I heard many voices outside Burkina Faso insisting that our reaction created unnecessary tension. These are the same voices that stayed silent when our people were left alone to fight for their survival. They are quick to offer advice, but never responsibility. They speak of stability, yet their actions have often fueled the very instability they claim to oppose. This hypocrisy is why I no longer measure my decisions by the comfort of outsiders. I measure them by the safety of my people. The unauthorized landing forced us to confront a critical question. How prepared are we for unpredictable moves in a region where alliances shift overnight and foreign agendas operate behind polite diplomatic language? I told my commanders to treat this event as a live test of our national readiness. Our response needed to be fast, coordinated, and disciplined, and it was. That alone sent a clear signal across West Africa. Burkina Faso is no longer a soft target. During the investigation, one conclusion became undeniable. Someone wanted to observe how we would react under pressure. Someone hoped to identify divisions within our command structure. They wanted to see if the Sahel Alliance could be shaken by a surprise event. Their expectation was simple. They believed Burkina Faso would panic, argue, or fracture. Instead, they saw unity. They saw control. They saw a nation that has rebuilt its spine. Nigeria remains an important partner, but I cannot ignore that certain actors within the region exploit these relationships. They create confusion between states so they can shape outcomes without accountability. If we had responded carelessly, those actors would have used the incident to justify new interference. That trap failed. Our clarity denied them the narrative they hoped to construct. This experience strengthened my conviction that Burkina Faso must continue transforming its security posture. Our skies must be monitored with precision. Our intelligence networks must grow stronger. Our communication with allies must be direct and immediate. In the new geopolitical landscape of the Sahel, hesitation is a luxury we cannot afford. We released the 11 soldiers, but we did not release our vigilance. We remain alert, we remain prepared, and we remain determined to protect our nation against every force that underestimates our resolve. Because the most important battles today are not fought with bullets. They are fought with decisions, discipline, and unwavering commitment to sovereignty. After the release of the 11 troops, many believed the situation had reached its conclusion. They were mistaken. The event triggered a deeper review inside Burkina Faso, one that extended beyond a single aircraft or a single group of soldiers. I instructed our intelligence services to map every regional movement that occurred within the same 72-hour window. What they found confirmed what I have been warning about for months. West Africa is becoming the center of a quiet contest between those who want a free Sahel and those who fear the rise of sovereign African states. We noticed an increase in surveillance flights near our borders. We observed unusual coordination between external advisors and certain political circles within ECOWAS. We detected information campaigns online designed to portray the Sahel Alliance as reckless and unprepared. These are not random events. They are orchestrated steps intended to weaken confidence in our leadership and to create doubt in the minds of our own citizens. This is why I say the aircraft was not the real threat. The real threat is the network of influence that hopes to slow our progress. A Sahel that governs itself frightens those who profited from our past divisions. A Sahel that builds independent security systems challenges those who benefited from our dependence. and a Sahel that unites politically forces the old powers to recheck their assumptions about Africa's future. I refuse to let Burkina Faso become the entry point for destabilization. Our people have suffered enough from policies made in distant capitals that never carried the weight of our reality. If the world wants to understand why we react firmly, they must understand our history. We have buried too many citizens to take any breach lightly. Our response is shaped not by fear, but by memory. What happened with the 11 troops also reminded me of the responsibility we carry within the Sahel Alliance. Our actions signal how far we are willing to go to protect our sovereignty. They shape the confidence of our partners in Mali and Niger. And they show the youth of Africa that leadership is not measured by how often we bow, but by how consistently we stand. This incident may fade from the headlines, but it will remain in my calculations. It sharpened our awareness, it strengthened our unity, and it marked a turning point in the struggle for Africa's self-determination. The story did not end when the soldiers left. It ended when we proved that Burkina Faso cannot be tested without consequence. As I reflect on the incident, I understand that many people outside our borders still underestimate the scale of transformation taking place in the Sahel. They look at Burkina Faso as it was years ago, not as it stands today. They expect hesitation, confusion, or disunity. But the new Burkina Faso is driven by a clear purpose. We protect our independence with discipline, and we confront strategic threats with clarity. The unauthorized landing forced the world to see this new posture, whether they were ready or not. The release of the 11 troops was only the visible part of our response. The deeper work happened behind closed doors. We strengthened our chain of command. We reviewed our air surveillance protocols. We increased cooperation with our partners in Mali and Niger. We upgraded the communication systems that alert us to possible infiltrations. These measures were not designed for a single incident. They were designed for the new geopolitical environment rising across the Sahel. I know that some actors hoped this event would shake our internal confidence. They believed a surprise landing would expose weaknesses or divisions. Instead, they witnessed something they did not expect. They saw a nation that responds rapidly, evaluates calmly, and decides with purpose. They saw a military that no longer waits for instruction from foreign advisors. They saw intelligence services that think independently and refuse to be misled by surface explanations. This is the Burkina Faso I have been working to build, a nation that understands the cost of past vulnerabilities and refuses to repeat them. Our people have endured years of conflict. They have carried the weight of decisions made by leaders who traded sovereignty for comfort. Today, we choose a different path. A harder path, but a dignified one. The 11 soldiers were never the enemy. The real challenge is the strategy behind the incident, the calculations hidden beneath diplomatic language, and the efforts to measure our readiness. I want every foreign power to understand this. Burkina Faso does not fear engagement, but we will not tolerate disrespect. We welcome cooperation, but we reject manipulation. We stand open to dialogue, but we will not kneel. This incident revealed who is watching us, who is testing us, and who is preparing for the next move. And it confirmed that Burkina Faso must remain alert. Because in this new era, sovereignty is not defended once, it is defended every single day. The world will remember the release of the 11 Nigerian troops as a brief moment in regional news. But for Burkina Faso, it marked a turning point. It reminded us that vigilance is not a choice, it is a necessity for any nation that refuses to bow to external pressure. The Sahel has entered a new chapter, and every decision we make carries weight far beyond our borders. I want our people to understand this clearly. The strength we showed was not for a single day, it was for the future we are building. A future where no foreign force decides how we defend our land. A future where unity within the Sahel becomes a shield against manipulation and division. A future where Africa determines its own destiny. The soldiers returned home, the aircraft is gone, but the lesson remains. Burkina Faso will never again be caught unprepared. We stand ready, we stand disciplined, and the release of the 11 Nigerian troops should have closed the chapter.